Hi everyone, and I'll get started while we wait for everyone else to finish joining. Welcome to this event. This is again CV and cover letter clinic. I will start by introducing us a bit to GAIN, for those of you that might not be familiar with us and what we do. And while we're doing that, if you don't mind, I'll run a brief poll, and if it'll pop up on your screen, and you could just answer a couple of questions, that would be amazing. So I'll do that now. Okay, well, that's on. I want to say welcome to GAIN. GAIN stands for Girls Are Investors, and we were founded by Tilly Franklin and some other co-founders to try and help address the lack of gender diversity in the investment management industry. At the time of GAIN's founding, I believe 10% of applications for investment management roles came from women, and GAIN's goal was to get that up to 50% in 10 years. And we do that by giving talks at schools for sixth formers mostly, but sometimes from year 10, and also this sort of thing for universities, so workshops and panel discussions. And we launched our internship program this year. So we're quite involved on the university side. Our the best part about GAIN is the fact that we've got this incredible network and of volunteers who just have a wide range of experience between them and are always so willing to sort of help with all our events and offer and share that experience with you all. And we've got 4 of them with us today, which is brilliant. We've got, as you know, CV and cover letter clinic, but we've got quite a range of experiences, and I'll introduce them briefly, and they'll all tell you about how recruitment evolved in their roles. So we've got Zoe Manners, Elcin Asuroglu, Kendall Langford, and Katya Leonov. And we're going to start off by going, I was just going to go with who I could see on my screen. So we're going to start off with Zoe, who's going to introduce ourselves. We're going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, tell you a bit about what they do, and also what role recruitment plays in their role. So Zoe.
Thanks, Vicky. Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe. I work for, I'm a consultant at a firm called David Barrett Partners. We are a New York headquartered executive search firm that specialize in placing people on the buy side, so effectively investment management. And we work both across investments and what we call distribution, which is effectively anything from a salesperson to a product specialist or an investment strategist within the asset management industry. We have offices in New York, Boston, and here in London. And from London, we work as a small team serving everything ex-US. Before that, before joining David Barrett Partners 6 years ago, I worked more at the graduate level and specifically around private equity and investment banking. So to Vicky's point, recruitment plays everything in my role. I look at CVs every single day, admittedly less cover letters, but hopefully be able to add some value in this session. Nice to meet you all.
I'm sure you'll be perfect. Thank you, Zoe. We'll move on to Kendall.
Everybody, thanks, Vicky. I don't come from a recruitment background, but it's very much in my everyday life. I am a founding partner of a private equity fund called Patron Capital. We are a real estate private equity fund with about 4.5 billion under management. And that's what I've been doing for 20 some odd years. As a founding partner, we were 2. So I was extremely senior on day 1, and I have remained extremely senior, which has been very convenient because as I started out as the only one or one of 2, I was able to keep that role. I was very lucky. So I have worked for 20 some years at Patron. My role there, which started off as changing light bulbs and doing spreadsheets, has now evolved to what I was trained to do, which is being on the strategic side, on working on fundraising and structuring our funds, and also working on our investments and our strategies. But I'm more on the sort of legal side of all that, but also very much part of the business. But we are looking at hiring people all the time. We don't have an HR department. We do it all ourselves. So we are constantly looking at CVs, and probably slightly differently than others, because we're about 70 now, but people don't go. So they sort of stay. So we like people to stay. So the fit into, even our interns tend to stay. So we like people to really fit into the ethos of our business. So possibly the covering letter for us is super important. Yeah, that's what I do. And I'm not American. Accent is misleading. I'm French / Eurotrash. So lucky me in Brexit. So that's that. That's me in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you, Kendall. We're going to move on to Elcin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elcin. So excited to be here. It's my first experience. So I work for Mondrian Investment Partners. It's an investment management firm, and I work there as a senior HR executive. Mondrian Investment Partners is a privately owned company, and we have offices in London and Philadelphia. So I have been working in HR for 10 years. I started my career with graduate recruitment at Capgemini, and I've been mainly working in financial services, including FCA. I worked in insurance, and right now in an asset management. I've been running a lot of grad specific activities, such as like assessment centers, a lot of interviews. On a day-to-day basis right now, again, I review a lot of CVs, like Zoe mentioned, not maybe a lot of cover letters, but mainly CVs. And obviously we work with a lot of recruitment agencies, but also I also review our sort of like direct inbox as well. So yeah, as you can see from my name, I am not from here as well. I'm originally Turkish. I came to UK 14 years ago, and just wanted to learn English and decided to study here. And then once I secured a job, I ended up staying. So that's me.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction, Elcin.
Anyways.
And last but not least, we've got Katya.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you for having me today. This is my first GAIN event. I'm very excited to join this community. I think the mission is absolutely critical in our industry. By way of background, I am a vice president in Houlihan Lokey's private funds group. For those who aren't familiar with Houlihan Lokey, it is a US mid-market investment bank, which has slowly been creeping into Europe over the last couple of years. What my team does is help private equity funds and private debt funds raise capital from institutional investors. So my day-to-day is spent speaking to investors across Europe, institutional investors, meaning family offices, corporate pension funds, endowment foundations, and the like. Admittedly, I am not that involved in recruitment at Houlihan Lokey. However, I started my career at Credit Suisse almost 10 years ago in New York and in London. At Credit Suisse, I was very heavily involved in CVs and in interviewing specifically for summer analyst roles and graduate scheme roles. So I've seen hundreds and hundreds of CVs, and excited to talk to you about this today.
That's great. Thank you all very much for the introductions. Before we continue, I just forgot to mention that if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, unless they're directly related to what someone's just said or is talking about. I might keep them till the end, where we'll have a Q&A session, but do feel free to send them through and I'll be looking at them all the way through. Sorry. Okay, so I feel like before we launch into CVs and cover letters, I'm going to ask all of our panelists or speakers to tell us the top CV or cover letter tip, like the one that you tell to anyone. If you had to give any one piece of advice, what would it be? And I will start with Kendall.
I only am allowed one. Only one. Can be lots of words.
You can give as many as you want. Whatever you feel like you need to say.
Okay. The obvious ones is to be clear, concise, and that you can follow it, and it doesn't beg more questions and all the rest of it. So presentation is quite important. But my top tip is know who you're sending it to and adapt it to who you're sending it to. And be truthful to yourself, and therefore you'll find the right match. I think that would be my top tip.
Thank you very much.
For dating game.
Thank you very much, Kendall. That's perfect. Thank you. And then I'll think we'll move to Katya.
So my top tip is, to Kendall's point, being concise. I think this may be a bit of a controversial statement in Europe because, I used to have a lot of back and forth. In the US, it's considered CVs should never be more than 1 page. And I personally think that that should be the same concept in Europe. And so, when we're looking through hundreds and hundreds of CVs especially for opportunities at the summer analyst level and the graduate scheme level, there are literally hundreds of applications. And so you can imagine it takes a long time to go through all of them. So keep it simple, keep it to 1 page, make it super easy to follow. And, you want to capture someone's attention in a short period of time. So I think I stay by my kind of American 1-page CV rule. I'd be interested to hear what Zoe and Elcin think about that as the real kind of experts in this.
On that note, maybe we'll go to Elcin and she'll tell us.
Thank you. So I think my top tip probably quite similar what Kendall just summarized. So I think what we would like to see as an employer when I look at the CVs, yes, we don't have a lot of time, so just keep it short, stick to 1, 2. If you have to, maybe 2nd page, but I think 1 pager looks great, and it should be a good summary of what you've done till this date. And I think from our perspective, adapting your CV, keep it updated and adapted to each job that you're applying for. Think it as a live thing, a live document that you should be updating. Do not send the same CV to all employers for all applications. And we'd like to see how you tie the skills required in the job to your experience, so that if you can just summarize that on your CV, that probably would make it look good.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, the second thing that I would like to say. Sorry,
I'm
sorry.
Oh yeah.
So the other thing I would say that obviously you guys are studying, you are submitting lots of coursework. Maybe some of you doing maybe dissertation. I'm not so sure, but you probably were doing this already. But your proofread is very important. Spelling mistakes get picked up, and if you see that in the CV, it just doesn't look so. Don't take it as granted. Always review and read your CV a couple of times before send it out.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Zoe?
Thanks. Yeah, I would agree, especially at this level. 1-page CV is absolutely ample. And I think the most important thing when you're at university or studying and you haven't had any experiences to have your education at the top. And I couldn't stress more Elcin's point about getting someone else to read it. The amount of people that start off saying that they are attention detail orientated, and then there's spelling mistakes, there's grammatical errors, and it lets you down before you've even had a chance to even meet in person. My other, and I'm sorry, I'm taking out lots, but just very quickly, the other thing I really don't like, and this made to Kendall's point when we were talking earlier, may be something that people like, but I really don't think you need a photograph on your CV either. I think have a LinkedIn with a very professional picture, not you on holiday with your friends, fine, but it doesn't need to be on your CV, especially for financial services, in my opinion.
It's really interesting. Oh, okay. It's good to know. Thank you, Zoe. Does any of you disagree with that? No. Okay, that sounds quite good. Thank you.
No,
in my
I would just add, not only a photograph, but be very careful about, and this is because the world is what it is, social media. You might not put a LinkedIn picture, but you might have, make sure that your Instagram and whatever gram and whatever chat and whatever it is private, because I can assure you that the employer will have a look, and you'll be amazed what we find when you really are serious. Maybe not for an internship, but even so, make sure your social media is cleaned up.
Oh, that's something I wouldn't have thought about. Thank you, Kendall. I was going to say, in my very limited experience, I helped review the applications for the internship program to sort of support what Zoe and Elcin said about, I say, get someone else to read your CV, get as many people as you can and your cover letters, because, and also, sorry, Kendall touched on this, tailor it to who you're applying for and check each one, because we had quite a few CVs for investment banking roles or cover letters. I even had a cover letter with the name of a different company that they were applying to. So please accept my application for this, which is instantly, it sounds really harsh, but unfortunately it means you just didn't care enough about our internship program to sort of, proofread, and that's what comes across. And it's just such a simple thing. It's not a good reason to be disqualified from the process. So please just focus on exactly that. Just proofread again and again. That's all great. Thank you so much, all of you. And I think now we'll launch into the CVs or cover letters. We've given all our panelists some CVs and cover letters. Thank you to everyone that sent them in. They're not going to mention any of your names, but they'll go through some of the CVs in their own way. So let us start with Zoe.
Great, thank you. So hopefully this person is attending, but they are very impressively still at school, which I liked the initiative to even be participating this evening. Just in terms of, obviously take on board everything that everyone's just said, but I think the main things for me on this particular one was the excessive amount of personal information. I think this person had clean driving license, date of birth, home address. I think they even had parents' details, which was a first for me. But I think that the main thing is it's full name, mobile number. You'd be amazed how many people leave that off. Email address, make sure it's all correct. You want them to call you if they're interested. But I think, it does, mostly, I guess, I used to, if you're applying for a nanny job, clean driving license could be very interesting to the potential employer, but for a financial services internship, it's not relevant in my view. I think if you want to include a personal statement sort of section, you've got to keep it very brief. What I saw on a lot of the CVs that I looked at was that a lot of the content could be included in a cover letter. And one of my biggest sort of bits of advice or things that bug me is people writing in the first person. So lots of I's, beginning sentences with I's. I think you really want to avoid doing that. And to go back to Kendall's initial point, it's formatting, being consistent with font style, font text. If you're going to underline one subsection, make sure you do it to all of them. Bullet points shouldn't really, in my view, have full stops at the end of them. And I don't think at this point you need to put detailed and take up space for references information. So I think it's nice just to say references available on request. And 9 times out of 10, you'll probably be applying through some kind of portal, which will have a different section for where you put your references. But I think those were the sort of main things. The other point I just wanted to make, more generally speaking, is I like to see education at the top, which I think I've already said, and then I think people read left to right. So dates on the right hand side, making it very clear. To Katya's point, people look at it so briefly, so you want to be able to see when are you graduating, when did you do that internship, how long did you do it for, and make it incredibly clear and well laid out. There was an excellent one that was sent through who's studying at Queen Mary University, which was just a perfect layout in my opinion. I'd urge you to look online. There's some great resources. I know Oxford University have a great careers portal on how to lay out a CV and a cover letter as well.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Can I ask one question based sort of a follow-up from that? You referenced the CV from the sixth former where they had like clean driving license. And so I'm wondering if you're in a situation where perhaps you don't have as much to put on your CV. I know one page sounds to some of us like it's a lot, but to some people, as no reflection of their sort of interest or desire to work in a particular field, they just might not have that much experience. what's the best way to sort of ensure that you have a one-page CV if you don't necessarily have too much relevant experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually this person, I think, had done a great job of that, because they hadn't had experience. Understandably, they're still at school. But I think that what they brought out was transferable skills from experience within their school setting. So whether that was a debating society that they were involved in, a sports team, you know, playing a musical instrument to a high level, and thinking about how that can be applied to a job, what that says, and to Elcin's point, sort of drawing out the transferable skills. I think when you take a step back, you probably can think of some really interesting things that you can move from the classroom into a work setting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zoe. That's great. I think next we'll go to Katya.
So I have a CV from a lady from the University of Warwick who is still studying. She looks like she is extremely busy based on the amount of activity on this CV. So well done. You probably get like 2 hours of sleep every night. So very, very, very impressive. Some very, interesting diversity on the CV, from a consulting society to a COVID response network, to running a fashion blog on Instagram. So that kind of diversity of interests, I think, is incredibly impressive. And one other thing I'll come to on these CVs. So things that I liked: nice and concise, one page, super easy to read, very consistent with the structure that Zoe outlined in terms of the dates on the right. We all read left to right, so very easy to read. The other thing that I liked is that this lady put very quantifiable achievements under each bullet point in terms of her work experience in extracurricular societies. So things like group training 30 new recruits over 2 days, phasing out 50% plus of unsuitable candidates, or connecting with 20 plus companies on LinkedIn to promote marketing track, or proactively established and maintained relationships with over 200 blogs. These quantifiable achievements are, the reason to put them is because it demonstrates that not only you're involved in these activities or in these roles, but you're also good at them. And you can also speak to them. And so, it's easy to say responsible for social media page for the Warwick Consulting Society. It's another thing to demonstrate what you've done with that role and what you've achieved, and thus what you can bring to the company. So those are two areas where I think this lady did a very, very good job. 2 comments in terms of areas for improvement. The first is that some of the activities under work experience, where it looks like this lady's been involved in for quite a period of time, so maybe over a year or 2, there's only 1 line. So I would suggest that you put a little bit more meat on the bone for activities where you've been involved in for a while. Otherwise, it seems like it's an activity that maybe, you participate in once a quarter or once a month, in which case it should really only deserves 1 or 2 lines on the CV maximum. So picking and choosing where you can demonstrate more quantifiable achievements, more specific tasks. And again, as Elcin had very rightly mentioned, catering those bullets based on the role that you're applying to. For example, if you're applying for a consulting role, discussing your role in the consulting society is probably more relevant and deserves more attention than your work on the fashion blog on Instagram, which is interesting to put, but really only needs 1 line compared to the consulting society. So pick and choose based on what you're applying to. And the second area of improvement is under the last section, which generally is, interest, skills, achievements. I think it's very important, and it looks like we actually have the first question from the anonymous attendee in terms of the interests that you put. I think it's actually very important to put a line or 2 on your interests on the CV, because at the end of the day, it's important to hire someone who's smart and can do the job well, but it's also important to hire someone that is likable and that you are going to enjoy being around, because especially at the junior level in the financial services industry, these jobs can be grueling and you're going to be spending a lot of your time with colleagues. So generally we like to work with people that have outside interests. So maybe you like, hiking or running or collecting 18th century coins, as this lady has said on the chat box. But putting something interesting is absolutely critical, so that we don't think that you're just, going to be crunching numbers silently all day long. I guess what they say in this industry is the airport test, whether you can spend a couple hours in the airport with one of your colleagues without getting completely bored, because obviously, generally pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, we will get back on the road and start traveling again, and you want to keep things interesting.
Thank you very much. That's incredible. Lots of good advice there, Katya. I've never heard of the airport test, but that's a good one. I was going to ask, the second question we've had on the Q&A is asking, basically, with activities, should they put them down with sort of, dates, sort of courses, or do they have to explain them individually? What's the best way to put down sort of activities, interests, would you say? I think anyone can answer in your CV how best to demonstrate those interests or activities you do in your spare time that aren't necessarily related to the role you're applying for.
I mean, I'll jump in unless anyone else does, but I mean, I wouldn't say you want to take up too much. I mean, hockey club is hockey club at university. I think save the lines for more quantifiable experience is my opinion.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm quite controversial. I'd love to differ, actually, because, just to make it interesting, Zoe. Nothing personal. I'm a patron where we are. For me, it's almost, most people always say, and it's different. You're going to apply for a big summer internship in a big company, and you're one of 100, like Katya said, of course. That's not my experience when I'm a patron. It depends where you want to go and where you want to fit in. But I get a lot of understanding what people do in their outs, because it's not only about achievements, it's how they achieve them. And when I see how somebody achieves them, whether it's doing crazy music videos, I mean, I hired a guy based on the fact that he did music videos. He had this perfect CV and I was going to throw it in the bin. And somebody told me, you have to interview him. I'm like, he's so boring. He's just so bloody perfect. I don't want to interview him. He doesn't have an angle that I can get. Anyway, I got pushed, and I went and I interviewed him, and I went in with my prejudged view and my unconscious bias, and you mentioned it. I was loaded, and I was bored to tears. I was right. I was bored to tears. I got like, why am I wasting my time talking to this guy? And then all of a sudden, which I'd missed, I looked at the bottom and I saw music videos. And I'm like, okay, let's just talk about bloody music videos. And the guy woke up, and he all of a sudden was passionate enough that he was too shy. And the guy's been with us. He came for 2 months. He's been with us for 5 years. Oh, wow. And that was thanks to the bloody music videos. I went back with my kids. We checked him out on YouTube on his music videos, and it said everything about him. Now, it doesn't apply each time. But I think sometimes, depending on what the job is and who the reader is, it might actually work. It's just a view.
I just want to add, one of the questions we ask in the interviews is, tell me something interesting about yourself. So seeing that on the CVs, I think, is interesting. And I think the way how you write it is also matters. So the way that you maybe word your activities, your what you've done whilst you were there. You just say, I don't know, like I participated this, I created this. So, like how you present it is also important. But yeah, I think those are the things that makes you interesting. So yeah, I agree.
Got like a interview tip there from Elcin, if you ever apply to Mondrian. On that note, maybe we'll move to you, Elcin. Will you talk us through your CVs? I think Elchin's quite high tech, so she's going to share her screen.
I am going to. I hope the person doesn't mind. I've took out all the details. So bear with me if I can share my screen. Okay. So here's my screen. I took lots of notes, but hopefully I won't take a lot of time. So again, a very nicely written CV, a one-pager. I quite like that, and I think one of the things that I picked up, and obviously I took it out now, that the contact details. So the name was on the left side and the contact details on the right side. I think it's not a deal breaker, but I would like to see them all together aligned in the middle, so that you can just catch the eye and can just see everything aligned. But again, that is not a deal breaker for me. And then one thing that I noticed here, if you are under education, if you're putting your predictions, guys, just make sure you put some evidence below it. So this lady put a prediction of the first class, but we can't see her results. So if we're putting our predictions, we either put results or we can just take it out completely. It's not a big deal. And she put very nicely her A levels. I think again we should be spelling those results out. Obviously very good results. And then in terms of work experience, again, I think it was Zoe mentioned that we should be putting, so if we're applying for a finance jobs, for example, we should be prioritizing putting them onto the top so that the employer could see the relevant work experience, what we've been doing. So I think this person did a very good job with that. I highlighted a couple of words in there because I think they're quite important when you're actually writing your CV. Things like, worked in a team, motivated team, participate, created. So when you put things like that, you can see how you take initiative, how you work with others. So that's very important. But I think overall, I know the skills part is probably a bit longer, but I think how she represented herself in that, I really like that. So I think this is a well written CV. So yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you, Elcin. Thanks for going through it so meticulously and sharing sort of all your thoughts on it with us. I have one question about predicted university results.
Mm-hmm.
Would in terms of evidence, do you mean maybe having, for example, your first and second year, so say results. Your third year, first and second year,
yeah.
so okay.
Your results, yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly.
Just something.
Yeah, and also with this CV, I think just under the university degree, she put her like activities, but perhaps putting your relevant modules, it might be a better way to represent it as well. So let's say if you're applying for a finance job and if you have any finance related modules, you can just put them there. And if you would like to put something under your university information.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Elcin. And now we're going to go to Kendall, who will talk us through a CV and cover letter, I think.
Good. I get to do both. Well, whoever I read, so I looked at her covering letter and her CV, and she can have my job because she's so good. I can't get over what these young people have achieved. It's absolutely extraordinary. So she is very, very impressive and well written and clear, and everything's on one page. So Katya would be very happy, and so would everybody else. One page, font. Somebody asked a question about font. Being as old as I am, I almost didn't have to put my glasses on. It was great. So all that was superb. Everything, it ticked all the boxes. Now, if I was saying earlier when we had our pre-panel discussion, we're 4 panelists and 4 of us would probably look at this very differently. And why? Because this person, I have no idea why. If it was me on the receiving end, I'm like, okay, great. She's obviously extremely, high achiever. But if I'm just looking at the covering letter, let's start with that. I don't know why she's applying to me. And that she has not made it at all personal to me. She has not said why this is interesting to her. Sorry, that's reality, isn't it? Just 1 second.
No problem at all. Okay, while Kendall's out, maybe I'll ask one of these questions. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. So it's not at all clear why she's writing to these people. It's for a summer internship program, and there's a lot of hyperbole. So that's the other thing it's very difficult with covering letters and with CVs. I don't know what the other panelists think, is to find the balance between boasting and not coming across as being extremely arrogant and full of yourself. And again, it depends on the reader. If I'm sitting here, a white male from Goldman Sachs, I probably would love it. I got nothing against Goldman, nor white males. But you can imagine, it just depends who your reader is. So this person's extremely confident, and it comes across as an extremely confident, but quite, so it's a very boastful. So I'll give you examples. And if this person is on, please don't take it in a bad way. You've achieved a huge amount, but I would tone it down just a wee bit. So she refers to herself as unique, as a future business leader, as having outstanding academic records. She craves things, so that the vocabulary is way too strong, I think. And, whatever age you are, you haven't achieved that much, so let's just keep it sort of real. So I would be put off by this, and somebody else might not. So that's my point. Four people, 4 panelists, 4 different companies might take a totally different view. So know who you're writing to. Are you writing to the HR person? Are you writing to the commercial person? Are you writing? Okay, so for some internships, you're probably writing and you're one of 100 and you just need to get it through. But as you're one of 100, you want to make sure that something's going to stick out and somebody's going to say, this person is interesting and I want to. I read this and I thought, she comes across as extremely ambitious, very competitive, possibly not a team player, possibly lacks a bit of social skills because she's so out there. So I personally wouldn't have looked at it any further. I would have stopped there, and which would be a real shame because she's done, she's achieved a huge amount. And if I had time, I probably would look at it anyway. So really from here, the point was, it might be the actually perfect covering letter for somebody else, but not for me at Patron Capital. So I think that's an extremely important point, but it's extremely well read, well written, clear, blah, blah, blah. The font is right, everything's perfect. So that's great. But just know who you're writing to and adapt it to who you're writing it to. I think that's extremely important. Also thank them at the end for taking the time. And I always find a bit of humor and vulnerability is not too bad either. Vicky, when you wrote to us, you made me laugh. It's always good. I liked you before we even started. You said about your marathons and not running and whatever. I know it's difficult when you're 19, 20 to have the chutzpah to do something like that, but you can try. It just makes something a bit, you're going to stand out. Whether your thing is humor, whether your thing is doing something extraordinary, but try to do it in a sort of a humble sort of way and in an interesting sort of way. So again, this person, the perfect CV, the font is great, the dates are right, I'm reading in the normal way, I'm going left to right, everything is set out. But again, it's the content. No, one thing this lady hasn't done right is her dates don't follow, actually, to be fair. It made me beg more questions. I couldn't figure out whether she was in China and in UK at the same time. Didn't work. So somewhere the dates didn't work, or she was online or wasn't online or something. So that you have to be careful that your dates add up and it doesn't look like you're overdoing it. Interestingly, I think it was Katya who was talking about achievements. Yeah, achievements I find interesting. And again, because you're young, you want to show everything that you've done, but show who you are too, not just a machine that has done 20, 30. This person wrote, she reads 30 books a year. A strange thing to write, if she read 2 that were that fat, great. If she read 30 that were that big, it was very much I've achieved. It was very much, this is exactly it. This is a very much achievement type style CV. And for me, that wouldn't work. Okay. But for maybe somebody else, it would work. Again, hobbies, a very high achiever. She's professional in some things and very avid in other things. And it's great, but how does that apply to me, or how? It just shows that she's extremely ambitious and competitive, and maybe that would be good for some people and not necessarily for me. So just be careful how you write, and make sure you know who you're writing to, I think would be my biggest tip, actually.
Oh, thank you, Kendall. That was such a great sort of detailed CV and cover letter analysis, and it's really helpful. And hopefully whoever did write it is here and can take away some really great tips and work on it. Does anyone have any comments sort of about Kendall's CV? No. Okay. I don't know, when you were talking, Kendall, about the language being a bit boastful, what kind of came to my mind was I've heard a lot sort of show rather than tell. So rather than say, I'm a future business leader, if you said in your CV some sort of, entrepreneurial or business initiatives you've taken, you might reach that conclusion without her having had said those words, which sort of kind of put you off a bit, while if she'd shown you through her experience and the things she'd done and her interests, you would have gotten there as well. She just wouldn't have had to tell you about it.
I would be very interested in hearing what Zoe and Elcin have to say on the basis that Katya and I are less in the forefront of recruitment. I think that's fair, Katya. I mean, we're not doing this every day, whereas Elcin and Zoe do that a lot more. How do people at this level find that balance? And a bit like what Vicky was trying to say, of trying to show as much as you can without sounding arrogant and boastful. And a lot of people, if you look it up on the internet, they say you should put this thing at the top of your CV, which is a personal profile, which is like a dynamic summary of who you are, and to avoid cliches and to be specific. And it's horrible when you read some of them, you're like, oh my God, these steps, they're cringeworthy. I mean, but I feel sorry for him. So how do you do it? How do you find that balance?
I think it's a great question, and I would say it doesn't happen often that the balance is struck perfectly. Either people tend to fall either side of that. They're either too self-deprecating and don't sing enough in their CV, or they're, to your point, on the other end of the spectrum. I think it's an incredibly hard balance, and I'm not sure there's a secret ingredient, to be honest. It just happens. And I think it's probably goes back to one of my first comments, is getting input from people who know you, but maybe also people who don't know you, and just trying to get an understanding from them of how it reads. And if you can, leveraging people who are in the industry that you're looking to go, does this appeal to, and I think, Kendall, your point about the audience is so crucial. And it's one of my biggest things is know your audience. Patron Capital obviously is a smaller organization. It sounds like this CV could be perfect for an investment banking internship at Goldman Sachs. And we're not slating Goldman Sachs here, by the way, but any bulge bracket investment bank, it totally depends on what you're going for. If they want someone who's going to work all the hours that God sends, and be incredibly ruthless in how they do it, then that might appeal, that kind of language. So I think knowing your audience, and that goes back to your cover letter as well. I know we haven't touched upon it much, but setting the scene, really understanding the firm that you're working for, the principles that they stand for, the job description you're going for, without regurgitating it. They don't want you to just paraphrase their website, because they know they wrote it. Kendall knows what's on that website for Patron Capital. She doesn't need to read it again, but I think there's a real balance. But I mean, I'm afraid I'd love to hear what Elcin says, because I personally think it's a tricky one to kind of give sort of either or black and white advice on how to strike that balance. So I think
I definitely agree. I think, yes, CVs are obviously very important, because those are the key things to get you the interview. But imagine, obviously, we receive 200 CVs and we obviously have 5 minutes to review each of these. I think it is a hard job, but I think there is a way. For example, this CV that I reviewed, I think I would quite like to meet with that person, because how she demonstrated and how she used her experience, including her extracurricular activities, her actual work experience, I think that was demonstrated quite well. But again, I don't think there is any right or wrong CV. It is just like, depends how you are representing yourself. And also, I definitely agree with Zoe, when we are writing cover letters to the companies directly, which I receive lots of applications on a day-to-day basis. Why why do you like my company? Why do you want to work for this employer? What is attracting you, and how can you sort of tie that into your own experience as well? Do you like their culture? Do you like their volunteering experience? What they do for ESG, or their projects, or their values? So find something unique and that speaks to you, and just tie that in quite well, so that it doesn't look like, oh, you're just using that because you just like want to get the job. But actually, you need to find the employer that you really like genuinely, because when you have to come to that interview stage, you're not just interviewing for the job, but you're also understanding, okay, is this the right place for me? So it's like a two-way thing. So that would be my comments. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Does any of you have anything else you'd like to add from any of the other CVs you've looked at, or should we move on to Q&As? Q&As? Okay. Should we start? I want to start off with sort of technical, like how your CV appears. We've got two questions I'm going to ask. Do you need to include your LinkedIn profile on your CV, or LinkedIn name profile? And what is the minimum font size you recommend? And while we're talking about font sizes, Elcin and Zoe, if you want to, also feel free to recommend actual fonts that you think you want to read a CV in, or what you don't want to read a CV in.
I think LinkedIn profile, I really don't mind. I think it just depends. Like when I open the LinkedIn, as I think Kendall mentioned, I don't want to see a drink in your one hand. And so for only professional photo, I don't mind having that in addition. That's absolutely fine. In terms of font, and as long as it's a readable format and it's not those like funny, bits that it just looks professional, I really don't mind. But obviously we're talking about putting everything in one page, so I think it's like as long as it's a reasonable size, it's readable, it's clear, I think that's absolutely fine.
And this is why CVs are so interesting, because everyone has a different opinion, as Kendall was saying. And the CV that Elcin showed me, I mean, I actually don't like that font at all. I found it quite, I was looking at it thinking, where are the sort of the breaks? I mean, personally, I would just stick with good Arial, Times New Roman. In terms of font size, you really don't want to be going smaller than 10, and I really don't think you need to at this stage of your career. I think there's also nothing worse than trying to put the margins right on the side of the page and trying to, it's very obvious when you open an email if someone's just spent hours trying to make it all fit on one page. So I think I'd be cautious of that.
Thank you, that sounds great. Katya, Kendall, do you have anything to add to those?
I think that's spot on.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to ask this. This is also a bit sort of technical. Basically, can we go over the structure of a cover letter? And they've asked because they want to focus on getting across their personality rather than achievement, because they have sort of little experience in the sector at the moment.
I'm probably less well placed to answer this. Kendall and Katya, you may see cover letters, and Elcin more than me, to be honest.
Sure, I can take a stab at this. Although I personally haven't written a cover letter in probably over 10 years, but I have read a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of structure, again, I would keep it short and sweet, not a lot of time, so make it super easily readable. First paragraph, 1 or 2 sentences, where you go to university. I'm a junior or a sophomore. I don't know what the equivalent in the UK is for those words. Whatever, second year, third year student, University of Warwick, and I'm applying for the role of portfolio manager at XYZ Capital. Second paragraph, what is attracting you to the company? You know, I think it's impressive that XYZ Capital has achieved X in only 3 years since inception, demonstrating its commitment to ESG is something that really resonates with me, whatever you think is attractive about the company and why you're really applying for this role. And then maybe a third paragraph that says why you would be a good fit for this role. So if you've taken modules in financial accounting and corporate valuation, and the role is going to be an investment banking role, then perhaps mention that, you know, you could pick things up easily. And it's something that you, or maybe you've done an internship in a similar industry before, so you can say that you've tried it out. You know that this is it's clear to you that you've done the research and it's where you want to build your career. And then importantly, as Kendall mentioned, thank the reader and mention that you're, you know, happy to discuss at a convenient time. So short and simple structure, and less words, less is more.
That sounds like the perfect cover letter. Thank you, Katya. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
So I actually, one of the cover letters that I reviewed, it was very well written, and I think a couple of things quite similar to what Katya was saying. So including their five elements for cover letters, like academics, motivation for applying. Again, I'm going to say something interesting about you, the skills that, you know, again, relevant to the job and how you're demonstrating your skills, and your volunteering experience as well. So when we say the academics, so this person that, you know, written this cover letter, for example, did not have a finance background, but they tied in, say, yes, I am not from a finance background, but this means that I have a different perspective and different point of view. So this could benefit for you, be beneficial for you. And then motivation for applying. This person again just talked about, you know, when they met someone, an employee from the company, and they're exposed to this specific area of this company, and just talked about how they tied that in with their internship experience as well. And then on the following paragraph, they talked about the skills they gained throughout their work experience, their volunteering experience, and how that is important to the company and to that role. Again, I think she's very diverse. She does music, she does languages, and she talks about attention to detail, which is again crucial for this role. Again, it was a very well written cover letter. So I think if we include those 5 elements and just embed it in a short, concise way, I think that what I would like to see in a cover letter.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Elcin. Anyone else?
I think there's also another thing you can think about on a cover letter is to don't try to pull the wool over the eyes of the reader either. So if you're trying to go for a job that where your skill set isn't 100%, don't try to wing it. Be honest about it. Like, you know, it might appear on the face of it. So then they don't waste their time. They get to their CV and then they get pissed off because they're like, well, this is totally irrelevant. It doesn't mean the person's not right. Actually, they might be. You know, people are hiring aeronautical engineers to go into banking. So I mean, it's not necessarily, but it's worthwhile owning up to it. You know, I love a bit of vulnerability, so it's good. So you know, you say I might not have the skill set, it might not appear that I have the skill set, but I think that because of XYZ, without going into your whole life story, is also nice. So the person will read and say, well, this person's human and honest and straightforward, and you never know.
Thank you, Kendall. That sounds great. That's such great advice from all our speakers. We're going to go for one last question, and we've touched on this, and I guess we'll clarify. Personal statements or career profiles at the top of your CV, basically summarizing the highlights from your CV. What do we think about them? Are they needed? If you think they are needed, how many lines? What should it say? Just what are your thoughts? I think maybe we'll go through all the speakers on this, and you can tell us what you think.
I'm a pass on this one. I think it's a bad idea to include a personal statement. If the CV is well written, the reader will be able to identify the areas of interest for that particular role very, very, very quickly. And so you don't need to write it out in the beginning. I think it's just, you have little space to start. It's unnecessary and repetitive, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Katya. Sounds great.
Next humble opinion, I agree. I don't see they add very much either. They always very difficult not to be cringy in them. And so I don't know what the specialists or they think about that, but I agree with Katya wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it's incredibly hard to write them without being cliched and listing out lots of good adjectives that, again, to Kendall's point, are quite, can read maybe a little bit pushy, or you know, I think you want, to Vicky's point, to sort of read the CV and see, oh wow, they are obviously hardworking, or without sort of just saying I'm a hardworking undergraduate, because it's so easy to write that, but actually to demonstrate that is a different thing. I think it's hard though. I remember when I was applying, if I wasn't applying with a cover letter, I thought that I had to include it. So I think there's probably times where it maybe is more appropriate. And if it is in that case, and you're doing a completely sort of cold approach to a firm, you've maybe highlighted 20, 30 firms that you really wanted to speak to who don't have formal applications, don't have an HR team, you know, and you're messaging someone like Kendall, I think you just use the email, body of the email as a sort of cover letter, and you can still keep the CV, but it's totally up to you. I think if you feel that one or two sentences adds something more, then that's probably your answer. But if it's just repeating the university, which is 3 lines below, and using cliched terms, then I don't think it adds anything.
Thank you,
Yeah, I agree as well. I don't think it's necessary, especially if you're just starting your career. I think we've been talking about how, you know, 1 page is enough. So I don't think we need that sort of repetition. And if you're someone very senior, very experienced, if you want to summarize your, you know, 10 work experience in that sort of like summary, maybe. But if you're a graduate, I think it's fine to just leave that. And as Zoe mentioned, the cover letter is there for a reason, and we could also use the body of the email sort of to summarize what we've done so far. So yeah, I agree.
Oh, thank you all. Hands up. I've got a personal statement at the top of my CV, which I'm going to remove after this because it doesn't sound like it necessarily adds anything, which is fine. But this is exactly why we put on these sort of events. And I want to say a massive thank you to all of you, because honestly, we've had so many, I feel like we've gone quite into depth on CVs and cover letters, had lots of different sort of opinions on certain matters. And I really hope everyone who either submitted a CV or didn't still went away from this being able to make at least a few sort of tweaks to their sort of CVs and cover letters. So a massive, massive thank you on behalf of GAIN and on behalf of our audience. I'm taking it upon me to say thank you to all of you, because you've just done an amazing job. And this is, again, I'm going to reiterate this because this is literally all. We couldn't do what we do at GAIN without our network of incredible speakers. You've met 4 of them today, and that's what GAIN, we have over 400 at the moment volunteers, which is why these people want to spend their time sharing with you. It's just absolutely incredible. And so please do stay in touch with us. This is the first week of our spring program. Our website is www.gainuk.org, and we're on all the social media channels. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram as Girls Are Investors. We're also on Facebook, as Girls Are Investors. And Twitter's the only odd one out. We're just at Our Investors. But stay in touch. We've got lots of other amazing sorts of events coming up. We do try and run sort of recruitment or CV events every term, because it's just so useful all of the time. And yes, we hope to see you all soon. And again, thank you to our speakers. We hope to see you all soon, because this has been brilliant. And thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.